that survive what they put them through. Today, 10 distilleries right here in Kentucky make 95% of all the bourbon in the world. And Tim, we're going to be focusing on this little fella right here, OFC. And as you can see, 1786. So we've been making hooch around here for quite a while. All right. So one of the key products that came out of this location was prompted by E.H. Taylor. So, and that's the name OFC. So he gave it that name at that period. It had been founded by a couple of brothers, Willis and Hancock Lee. And most people don't realize the little settlement that was formed here was called Leestown. 1,000 people worked around here, hence the road to Lexington, Kentucky, Leestown Road. It all started right here at Buffalo Trace Distillery. So in 1992, the distillery is purchased, and the first release of the new Buffalo Trace product was named after the buffalo who actually roamed through this area. And we released that in 1999, beginning of 2000. But let's do this. Let's go back. Let's go back in time. Let's crank it back and talk about the days and the way hooch used to be made and what was so special about it. Where we're about to go, Tim, very few people have ever gone before. So this is the vault. If you come to Buffalo Trace Distillery, there are people that stand right here and they drool. You have to wipe down the bars every now and then. And they look inside and they say, oh man, look at that. So we'll go inside. We're going to kind of pan around a little bit, and then we're going to pick up a couple of our favorites, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of those particular products. So we're going to focus today on OFC and Old Charter and how they came to be.
Great.
Now, we have to do something here. In order for me to go in here, I'm going to have to shut off the alarm.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to unlock this thing. So give me a moment
All right.
to do that.
Come over here. Check this whiskey vault out.
You're standing on my lead there. There you go. Oh. There we go.
We good?
Come inside.
All right. I'm just as excited as probably anyone to come in here. I've been looking at this for years and years.
You know, we're known for some pretty good products, but let's just start right here with those right there. Failed.
Failed experiment.
So imagine if you were back in the day and how many batches of really bad whiskey and bourbon got created before the ones that we've come to look forward to today coming out of this distillery. So not every batch that you experiment with is good, but you learn from your failures. So let's drift down through here. So those are the ones that we're still archiving those.
I've always heard you guys talk about if you don't keep the failed ones, how do you know what bad whiskey tastes like later? So you can compare it. You got bad whiskeys that you can taste later.
But the other part of that is that who says that later on, if I marry two of those failed ones together, I don't come up with something that's pretty darn good.
It's true. It looks like this is Prohibition era.
Yes, Prohibition. There's some of the original products coming out of here. A lot of these are on loan. The tags on there, basically, they're all archived products.
Mm-hmm. I know these are on loan, right?
Oh, yes.
These are on loan. Yeah.
So people come through here, they see a lot of our stencils, and they'll see some of these products. They don't even know that they originated here. Mm-hmm. If you ease around this way, just kind of go down through there, you start to see there's some of our Old Charter. Sazerac started down in New Orleans. It's become rather famous. So we got the Sazerac 18, and we also have the Sazerac 6-year-old. But there's your Old Charter. We've got a couple of them that we've pulled that we're going to talk from here in just a minute.
Okay.
If you swing around, there's our Taylor Expressions.
Yep. Looks like Sazerac Rye. I think these are all first releases, first batches, and things like that, right? Okay.
You swing on around. Just please watch your step as you come around through here. You can see one of the OFC canisters is missing. We've got it out front. We've got that decanter out front here. There's your Double Eagle. Oh, yes. 20-year-old Eagle Rare. There's your Pappy. So we've got the 23-year-old Pappy, we got the 25-year-old Pappy, we got the barrel-proof Pappy. And the one there, the decanter with the wooden case around it, that's actually made from the barrel that the whiskey came out of.
That's really cool.
Okay, so there's your 23, there's your 20s, there's your 15s, there's your 13-year-old rye, your lot Bs, your 10-year-old, and you just keep coming around. And there's Blanton's. Yeah, Blanton's is in here too.
Yeah. Looks like some first batch, first releases of Buffalo Trace.
Yeah. So what you do is you don't, when you're doing a small batch bourbon, you don't compare it to the most recent release. You go all the way back to the beginning, Tim.
Yeah.
And you compare this release to your archived batches, and it's to make sure the taste profile of the products that we're creating are not drifting over time.
Right.
So look at that. You get down, there's your Wellers. There's
Look
some of your original Wellers.
Yeah, some old
Those old
Wellers.
Dusties. What do they call them? The old Dusties?
Old Dusties, for sure.
You know, these are the ones you only bring out with people you like. You know, if I don't like you, you won't even see these coming out of my vault. Now, there's the single oak. That is a good segue into where we're heading next.
Okay.
There's your Stag.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's your
My
Stag
favorite.
Junior there. But Stag goes back in time. So a lot of people just remember Stag from when we started doing the Stag Antique.
Yeah,
and then we did the
step
Stag
through.
Junior. But Stag, remember, one of the original names for the distillery was the Stag Distillery.
It's a beautiful bottle.
Yeah. So shelf presentation has always been a part of the products coming out of here. And E.H. Taylor established that back in the 1800s.
Yeah, I just can't. Look at the glass on that old George C. Stagg bottle. I think those are from 40s through the 60s, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
You drop down in some of the old Weller bottles, up to some of the newer Weller bottles. Your old Weller 107. See, a lot of people don't realize that the Weller Antique 107, as they know it today, we had Weller 107 back in the day.
This is the oldest one, I believe, this corked one back here, Weller Special. That is really neat, Freddie.
So it's a good segue into what we're getting ready to talk about, because it's not about making a good batch of bourbon, Tim. What is important is being consistent with those products that you make. And that's what Buffalo Trace is all about. So remember, the motto of the distillery, as we look at these old bottles, is only 4 words. Honor tradition, embrace change. So we're going to start off by talking about a little bit about Old Charter.
Okay.
So let's go from yesterday to tomorrow. I'm going to have to break away for a moment.
Okay.
These are the ones we're going to talk about, but
right.
I need to turn the alarm back on and shut it back down here real quick.
All right. Yeah, I can't wait to get into these. And so, Freddie, as you're doing that, we've got folks from all over the place. We have people from Southern California, Rob from England, Dwayne from Virginia, and Ryan from Boston already. So lots of folks chiming in and checking it out.
So, Old Charter.
Okay.
Maybe we should call it Very Old Charter. So it goes back to the 1800s. So a lot of people know about it. They remember probably the Old Charter 8-year-old. But Old Charter actually goes back to the 1870s.
Wow.
So these bottles in the middle here represent a cool point in history. They're 100 proof, 15 years old. Oh, yes. So this is the kind of stuff that back in the day you could look at they called it the whiskey stamp. So you could look at if you can see that stamp on the side, you'll see the dates on there. Can you read that?
Yeah. Says maybe 33 and fall 19 or 1917.
So what does that imply?
Yeah, the age. So distilled and
Yeah, the kick,
bottled.
Yeah, so the kicker is this. So the OFC that was in this bottle was actually made prior to Prohibition.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, yeah.
And so then it had to sit there because Prohibition, remember, went from 1919 to 1933. So this whiskey came out when Prohibition ended. So even though we were making whiskey for medicinal purposes, some of those barrels were actually just sitting there aging. Unbelievable.
It is.
Unbelievable. The other thing you'll notice is even open, look at the loss in the bottles just out through the cork over time. So another interesting thing that they did back in the day is a lot of the bottles they had an amber color to them. Filtration and things like that weren't quite as refined as they are today. So a lot of times you get some little particulates and things like that. And a lot of people would make an amber colored bottle just to make it look like it was a little bit darker and richer. As we started to clean up the glass, a lot of people appreciated the product that was inside. So you can see the difference in the design. Now shelf presentation is coming into being. What we were joking about earlier was, but you had your jigger cup. You could always pop a cork and take a swig with your friends. All right. So you begin to look at these 100 proof, and then we moved into the chartered oak program that we've got now. And that's what we're really getting excited about. So we started off doing research on the oak itself. So that's the key part of our chartered oak program is let me say this before I even talk about this.
Sure.
These two are both what we call mash bill 2. That was back in the 80s.
Okay.
Okay. So they are now mash bill 1.
Gotcha.
So, but these were barrels back in the day using the old recipe associated with the distillery.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's a new one. Okay.
Yes. So the newer ones are now mash bill 1. These are 90 proof. So when we talk about the releases that we do now, 90 proof. We were having a discussion about why 90 proof seems to be so popular with all of our products. So if you think about the Wellers and the Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, the old Chartered, the Chartered project, 90 proof. And it's because of the palate. So what we've discovered is it's the right dilution that keeps the alcohol from being a dominant factor, but it opens up the subtle nuances and the other flavors that are inherent in that recipe. So the oak, what we're finding is we're actually learning more and more about the contribution of the oak to the product. So this one is Mongolian Oak. So we've had some pretty cool releases associated with oak. So some of the things that we're finding, we did the single oak project as you saw in there earlier. So here's what we've discovered, and the reason that this oak program is so important. The only stipulation for bourbon is it has to be aged in a newly charred oak container. It says nothing about the species of the oak or the country of origin of the oak. So we started here in North America, and we've been all over the country finding different species of oak. And what we're learning, what we started here learning was with the single oak project, even where the tree grew in the Ozarks, top of the ridge, north side of the ridge where you have moss and ferns and lichens and algae, okay, versus the bottom of the ridge where all the nutrients wash to, the trees grow real fast, all right, get real big. But guess what's key? We discovered the number of growth rings per inch was critical to the flavors you're going to extract out of this piece of wood. So we now have some barrels aging in the warehouse where the trees are between 100 and 300 years old.
Incredible.
Oh, yes.
And Freddie, we've already got several questions, coming in. If you don't mind, we'll ask some questions.
Yeah, let's do that as we go along. We'll stay focused on what they're looking for.
Yeah, so, we're looking at old bottles and looking at new bottles, and some of these do have some loss, but Steve asks, would that old whiskey taste okay, or does it also lose taste over time? Do we know that?
We do.
Okay.
And something that it was Elmer T. Lee who first brought it to our attention. There were some folks that thought they had gotten bad whiskey. They thought their whiskey had gone bad. It was in a bottle for a long time. But what Elmer first brought to our attention was sometimes the purity of the glass would have a lot to do with the flavors of the whiskey inside. So he said what actually happens is what you can do is if you're fortunate enough to have a really old bottle of whiskey, he said what you do is pour some out into a glass, immediately put the cork back in the bottle, and let it breathe for a period of time. So Drew Mavell, our master blender, says for the essence of his bourbons and whiskeys, when he's really getting into this, he just lets them sit there and breathe for about a half hour.
So that helps.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we know anytime you have really, really old whiskey, really old whiskey, you never know, right? I mean, you never know. Some of the early stuff.
Yeah, so that's where E.H. Taylor came in.
That's right.
You know, there really wasn't a standard for what chew of tobacco you could use in your whiskey back in the day.
Exactly.
All right?
So you got to be careful.
Yeah, you got to be careful. But remember, a lot of people don't understand this, and it's critical. Water molecules are smaller than alcohol molecules. Okay, so a lot of times your loss is the moisture. So we haven't really tested these to find out if the proof is actually going up as you do this. So the recommendation is, just like your really good wines, you have a wine cellar or a chiller. The recommendation is for your really old bottles of bourbon or whiskey, since you cannot lay them on their side because the alcohol weeps out, you put them in your wine cellar and you keep them in a cool, dark environment, okay, where there's not a lot of direct sunlight. They will last forever. So the essence of the question that was asked is, bourbon really doesn't go bad, all right? But when you get down really, really low, it'll start to oxidize on you. So that's when you want to just get with a friend and drink it up, okay? But just remember, like this, in a nice, cool area, you're good to go.
Well, speaking of friends, we do have an interesting question. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but Jason Cook asked, if you could bring 3 friends and have a pour from any bottle in the vault, which bottle would you pick? Is there a bottle in there that you could crack and you're like, okay, best friends and Tim, what are we going to drink?
Oh, that's tough.
It's a tough one.
That's tough.
You think about it.
Yeah, because I might have to taste 2 or 3 of them before I decided this is the one that we need to go with, right?
That's fair.
But from a sentimental standpoint, the closest that we've been able to replicate the products that they've made here years ago, it would be my Stag Antique. Okay? That would be my favorite. That would be capture the essence of all of this, whether it was a mash bill 1 or a mash bill 2, but that age, barrel proof, and that 15-year vintage. Remember, 15 years.
Yeah.
So there's something about this 12 to 15-year period for these older products sitting in the ground levels of a warehouse that make them taste so good.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great answer. My favorite as well. We got one more, if you don't mind, Freddie. Do we know what the oldest vault or oldest bottle in the vault is? Tim asks in there. Do we know which one? Or do you know? If not, I know there's a couple old ones.
I do not know, but I'm like that wizard that has a source.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I'm going to go to my source drawer and I want to see if we can get that answer real quick for Tim. Okay. So that answer would be.
Do we know which?
It'd be one of the old charters.
Okay, one of the OFs, one of the old charters.
The old charter.
Okay. Be one of these.
So
there's several in there.
Right, and so now we're going back to.
Somebody once told me, Freddie, you don't need to know all the answers. You just need to know where to find them.
That's exactly right. So and it's a cool question that was asked, and it's about integrity. So the deal is, what we try to do at Buffalo Trace is, if we don't know the answer, we're going to try to get the answer for you as quick as we can, but we're not going to blow smoke. So if I don't know, which is what I said, I don't really know.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yep. There's a lot of old ones in there. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, speaking of old, besides Freddie, we have another product here called OFC. Okay. This is E.H. Taylor. This is the essence of E.H. Taylor. This one goes back to the 1800s also. Okay, 1870s, E.H. Taylor purchases this distillery, and it's a cool intro into what you were just talking about. E.H. Taylor had become very disturbed about the fact that there was no standard for whiskey. So basically the Food and Drug Act was the result of E.H. Taylor standardizing the specifications for making whiskey. Okay, so that's where bottled and bond came in and all those things. So for those of you that are not familiar with this, bottled and bond goes back to some of his first releases. So that means that that product was made, processed, distilled at Frankfort, Kentucky, at this site during the same season. Okay, it's got to be at least 4 years old. Okay, no additives, no other things, but that's the real McCoy, and
Very
that
cool.
started the industry. Fast forward, honor tradition, embrace change.
Yep.
So the OFC, that is the ultimate in someone wanting something that is a classic. If those that are watching are familiar with the OFC release program, so these are about 25 years old. We'll do 2 or 3 years, and we will actually marry those barrels together. What most people don't realize, when your whiskey's been around for that period of time, your loss rate is unbelievable. So you lose 15% the first year, 3 to 5% every year thereafter. So by the time you get to this point, you only have maybe about 5 or 6 gallons left in that barrel.
Yeah.
So you marry those barrels together, and these are cut to 90 proof. Remember we talked about 90 proof before. These are cut to 90 proof, but the first release of this, there were only 50 bottles, and guess what? They were given to charity. You ready for this one, Tim? It raised over $1 million for charity. Honor tradition, embrace change. So sometimes it's not about what you can make, but it's what you can give back to the community.
That's right.
So we're nibbling pretty close on the time.
We are.
I hope that this gave you, it was an appetizer. So if you've not been to Buffalo Trace and you want to come by and check us out, take a moment, do so. I'm not sure if you have any other questions or anything like that, but we're pretty much right at the end of our rainbow.
We are. We're almost at 25 minutes, Freddie. I know you've got a couple places to be right away, but I think we're good. We've got a lot of people chiming in and from all over the country and different parts of the world. So thank you so much, Freddie Johnson.
Thank you very much for spending time, and thank my special sorcerer who is handling all those with all these bottles with rubber gloves. You notice I haven't touched these bottles, right?
I was going to say, I wanted to turn them around a few times, and I forgot. We can't handle these ourselves.
No, we
They
can't
don't trust
handle
me and Freddie with these bottles.
But thanks, everyone, for coming out to see us, and next time, come here in person.
That's right.